Yo, I'm wearing sunglasses because I don't want anyone to, including myself, to take this too seriously. Okay, so in this video, I'm gonna go over why I don't code anymore, what I learned at FANG that kind of convinced me about this, or convinced me to not really focus on code much anymore, but more still software engineering, but not the code. I'm gonna talk about prompting, and I'm gonna talk about reinforcement learning. Disclaimer, again, all this stuff might be wrong. I don't know. But I'm just gonna go with it, and I'm gonna say under 10 minutes as usual. Okay, so yeah, I don't code anymore. What I do is pretty much vibe code, right? And I think a lot of people are doing that. What did I want to say there? So the reason why I don't code anymore happened when I learned this at a FANG company. So I was a software engineer, trying to go through the story in my head. So yeah, I was a software engineer. I was learning a language that I didn't know, but I should have known, but I just didn't know that particular language as well as I should have, I think. I had experience with it at a internship and at school. I'm just thinking about anyone who I used to work with that could potentially be watching this. I'm gonna try not to think about that. But yeah, so I should have known this language going into the job, but that doesn't always happen. And so I had to ramp up on that language really fast, or as fast as possible. And that's kind of around when ChatGPT first got pretty popular. I think I was, I don't know, maybe like 6 months later than like the really cutting edge people, but not cutting edge people, but just like people who were, I was like, okay, ChatGPT, what's that? And I heard chatbot, and I didn't really try it until about 6 months or something. So that was my headspace then. And yeah, so I had to ramp up on this language, and I just realized how fast you could learn a new language, learn enough to be able to code in it. Because of that was before I actually tried to really code in that language. I was working on a series of designs, I would say. And I also hesitate to go through this stuff because I don't want to talk about stuff that I'm not allowed to talk about. So I try to keep it really high level and general. And so, and I don't know what really, I don't know the exact, I'm sure it's a gray area. But yeah, so I was working on some designs, and first getting into ChatGPT, and mainly what I was doing was understanding the code base, because that's how you have to come up with the design. You have to understand how the current code works first. I just realized how fast you could learn with an LLM. And then, I can't remember, I did do some implementation, but what I realized was, hey, and I want to explain this part. So this is like, go into the next part, which is top-down prompting. So I realized how fast I could learn new stuff. Then, since I was working on a design, which if you don't know, a design in a tech company is like a sheet of paper or something, a document that you write, and it's pretty technical, and you talk about that design with different teams and people who that design would affect. And so you basically have to write this document and then talk to a bunch of people about it and give feedback on it. And then if it's good, then you can go and build the thing. But you have to understand how all their systems work in order to get approval on that design. So at least how it worked at this company. But works pretty similar everywhere that I know of. So you could see how it's kind of like a top-down design / collaboration process, where actually a little bit more about that process is that you come up with the top level design, which is a very high level view of the project and not super technical. Then you make a little bit more detailed designs for the different components of that top level design. So you can see how a sheet of paper, a document, that one gets feedback, updated, edited, and approved, and then you can create the more detailed designs. So but you base this document off of this document, and you base this document off of this document, and this one too. And you can also see if you have agents or anything like that, that's also like a hierarchical design where you potentially can have a prompt that feeds into something else, that feeds into a different prompt, like if you've used N8N or any agentic workflow. So I realized like kind of how you could do an agentic workflow before I even knew what N8N was. And that's kind of what went through my head in terms of like, dude, okay, then you can write a top level design and then a bunch of detailed designs based on that, all with just an agentic workflow. It might obviously not work right, but you could do it in theory. And I bet you could, tune a prompt workflow that actually built, wrote the code and all that stuff all the way down. Because after you get done doing the detailed designs, you implement it, and that's just writing code, right? And testing it and the whole development process. So that's what went through my head. A lot of people, everyone's doing that now, and that's how all the frameworks work or whatever. But that I just wanted to share that. If you didn't know, actually, because I think there's a lot of people that don't know that that's how it works. And that's what so many people are doing, because here's another reason why I'm doing these short, raw videos about whatever I'm talking about. It's because these can be used as prompts. So anything can be used as a prompt. It's just input to a top level design. And so whatever you make, you can put it in there and potentially get something out generated. So that's why I don't really code anymore. It's because I had this realization of learning how fast you could do stuff with LLMs, like Learn, and how everything fit together in terms of how I thought stuff would be implemented from a top level design down to detailed stuff down to code. And then that led me to focus more on that agentic architecture than actual coding, or like it just narrows your focus to something that you think is going to be the way forward for a lot of stuff. And by the way, I purposely avoid looking at too much like AI content because I don't want to fall into the traps that everyone else is like doing. I just don't want to do what everyone else is doing. I stay up to date on it, but I don't necessarily use all the tool, like every single new tool that comes out. And I don't even use LangChain, but like it's because maybe I should, but I don't think that you need to. I think you can build stuff other ways. It's not gonna be the perfect framework for every problem. And I think the problems that I want to solve, I've said this before, but the problems that I want to solve are more stuff where you actually want to know what the agentic workflow is like and how it's, and then update those top level designs, and then just have everything else generated. And other people will work on that stuff because that's like the obvious stuff. That's actually like, writing the code and building the individual things. And I think that stuff will get swallowed up fast by just models who are getting better at that kind of stuff. So what I think I want to focus on is the really high level, very abstract stuff that is a little bit more artistic. And that's why I'm doing this, because you can literally use this. This is a design, right? Like a lot of the protocol stuff that I've been talking about is basically a design. And so if I fed that into, Cursor or something, it could come up with something and you could do it too. And that's why that's part of the art. But the last thing I want to talk about is reinforcement learning real quick, because I'm already at 10 minutes. But basically, you can see how you can build a agentic workflow, in other words, a prompt chain, and you can have it update based on how successful it is at actually building the tool that you're trying to get it to build, or design, building out the thing that you're trying to implement in terms of the top level design. And the way I see it being done, or what we should actually focus on as engineers and builders is those top level abstract things. And because the other stuff, the way it gets better is through like basically taking all that low hanging fruit of easy stuff to do with an LLM and swallowing that up and putting it in an agent. And then now when you use Cursor, you don't have to do that thing anymore because that's already taken care of. And so they're just like, over time, automating away a lot of the stuff that is easier to do and you don't necessarily want or need to do it anyways. So that's just another reason for me wanting to do this really kind of abstract, high level, top level stuff. But yeah, reinforcement learning is like when you have one of those flows or you have some automation that's doing something and then based on its performance either gets changed or it gets or it stays the same. So if it's not performing good, if it's not implementing something correctly, then they'll change the workflow pretty much so that hopefully it does better the next time. And it's optimizing for some reward, which is just a number that goes up and down. And I think that that's reinforcement learning works based on goals. And because we can now define stuff in natural language, then we can set goals in natural language. Anyone can do that. And therefore anyone can be a top level designer just by setting a goal in natural language. That gets compiled down to software and all the stuff at the bottom is already being automated away. So what we need to focus on, I think, is specifying the actions in more detail that go into the quote unquote reinforcement learning because it's being optimized on a variable. And so we should have more say and understanding into what those variables are. And boom, mic drop. No, I'm joking. Yeah, hopefully that made sense. I've been wanting to talk about this quite a bit. And yeah, all right. See you guys.